What's going on, YouTube? If you're new to this channel, normally I talk about mostly Harleys and Harley related content, but I just got a 2022 Grom not too long ago. Over the course of this year, I'm going to continue to build my library of Grom content, but today I wanted to talk a little bit about choosing between a second generation Grom or the SF Grom versus the third gen Grom. If you're currently in the market for a Grom and are trying to decide between the SF Grom, the third gen Grom, like I've gone through the same thing. It took me a lot of thought and going back and forth with some friends to figure whether or not I wanted to go with the 2022 model or the second gen model. So I thought it might be helpful for those of you who are kind of thinking through the same thing. And so I'm going to weigh different factors and award a point to the version of the Grom that I think wins that category. And in the end, we'll see which Grom comes out on top. All right, let's go. The first category that I wanted to cover is price. Price is always a big factor for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people. And even though it may not be the same as buying a full-size bike, it's still a big investment by a few $1,000s. For me, when I looked into the used market for a second-gen Grom, the prices were much more friendlier. I'd say depending on your area, you can easily find a second-gen Grom from anywhere between like $2,300, $2,800. That was generally the range that I found on average. And of course, there's a lot of variables that play into that, like the mileage, the year, the mods, etc. But with the 2022 Grom brand new, you're looking at around $3,300, $3,500 MSRP. And out the door price is always kind of a variable between $3,600 to $5,000, believe it or not. It's pretty wild. I know a lot of dealers were adding fees and surcharges because of the limited inventory. When I bought my 2022 Grom, I had to call a bunch of different dealers to get the best price available, which is why I drove out close to 100 miles to pick up my Grom. So for this round, in terms of price, I think it's safe to say that the SF Grom or the second gen Grom has the advantage. The second category that I wanted to talk about is just engine performance and performance in general. So when I looked online, both the second gen Grom and the third gen Grom, they both have comparable or similar specs in terms of horsepower and torque. I believe it's about like 9.7 horsepower and about 8 foot-pounds of torque. So on paper, the second gen Grom and the third gen Grom really seem to have similar specs on paper, but the third gen Grom engine is undersquare, which aid in both efficiency and economy, and with that has a little bit more top speed. The third gen Grom also has 5 gears versus 4 gears on the second gen Grom. So in this round, because of the 5th gear, because of the added efficiency and the higher top speed, I'm going to give the engine performance to the third gen Grom. Fuel economy. Both second gen Grom and the third gen Grom are incredibly fuel efficient. But the third gen Grom has a slightly improved mark in terms of miles per gallon and also an increase in tank size, which will allow you to travel further. The third gen Grom has an estimated 155 miles per gallon reported, whereas the SF Grom has 134 miles per gallon. On my Grom, I'm getting somewhere between like 130, 140 based on how I drive, but if I was really conservative with the throttle, I could probably get about 150. So in this round, I think the third gen Grom ekes it out just by a hair. Aesthetics is the next category, and although aesthetics is somewhat subjective, I'd give the nod to the SF Grom. I personally think that the mini naked bike look that the SF Grom really works for the Grom. Along with that, the dual LED headlight from the SF Grom really brings it all together for me. To me, the third gen Grom looks good, but it just kind of looks a little bit goofy. I can't put my finger on it. I almost didn't go with the third gen Grom just because of that headlight. I don't know what it is. I can't get over it. I've even personally thought about switching the headlights between the second gen and the third gen because I really don't like my third gen headlight. I know that the headlight on the third gen Grom is kind of like a nod or paying its dues or respect to the OG Grom, but it just doesn't work for me. So in the aesthetics round, I'll give the nod to the SF Grom. For comfort, now I'll preface this by saying I've never owned an SF Grom. I haven't ridden on the SF Grom, but I've done a lot of research and I'm only reporting back from what other users have said. Now, with all that being said, I do think that the third gen Grom is slightly more comfortable, and here's why. The seat design is long and flat, so it gives you a lot of room to stretch out and switch positions if you need to, whereas the seat on the SF Grom has a little scoop, so you can't really adjust your seating placement. For this round, I think it's safe to say that the third gen Grom gets the point. So let's talk about reliability. In terms of reliability, both Groms are obviously made by Honda, which is known for its incredible consistency and just reliability. Honda hangs its hat on that. But when you get really detailed into the nitty-gritty, I think the SF Grom probably has an edge. probably is more reliable than the 3rd Gen Grom because it's had a few years of iterations to work out the kinks. 3rd Gen Grom is really the first iteration. I think it's safe to say that the 3rd Gen Grom, you can probably expect to see some issues. Actually, if you search on YouTube right now, there's a couple of issues with the 3rd Gen Grom. The one that really stuck out to me is this high-pitched whirring sound that a few YouTubers have documented. I haven't checked back in on that because I haven't had that issue on my Grom, but that's been well documented. It almost scared me away from getting the 3rd Gen Grom. So I would say when it comes to reliability, the 2nd Gen Grom has been out there for a while. You probably won't have any issues. So yeah, since it's always a little nerve-wracking, getting a first-year production model, and because it hasn't had all the time to work out the kinks in the system, I'll give this round to the SF Grom. All right, we're almost towards the end. In the end of the video, I'll tally up all the points and we'll talk about, which Grom is worth choosing, one or the other. My 8th category is just aftermarket support. And for the same reason as the reliability, the SF Grom gets the point in terms of aftermarket support. It's been out for a while longer, so there's plenty of more parts to choose from, whereas the 3rd Gen Grom has been out in the US for a year. Even for me, as I'm looking out to get parts for the bike, there's just really not a lot to choose from. And usually when that happens, the prices that you do find on the items that you want are generally higher because there's less competition. So for me, in terms of aftermarket support, SF Grom wins hands down. My last category, and really this was kind of an afterthought, but I'll throw it in there, is customization. I think for this round, both bikes are very customizable, they're inexpensive to mod, but in this particular round, the 3rd Gen Grom wins by a slight margin. And I think it's because it was designed to be fully customized. And what I mean by that is the body panels are all designed to be replaced with something different. Now with that said, that really didn't play a huge factor for me, as I mentioned, because both bikes are so easily moddable and customizable. So whether or not I could replace the body panels, that was really of no consequence for me. All right, so if you're keeping score, the SF Grom won these rounds in terms of price, aesthetics, reliability, aftermarket support, while the 3rd Gen Grom won these rounds: engine performance, comfort, fuel economy, and customization. For me, you all know I picked up the 3rd Gen Grom because I really wanted that 5th gear right out of the box. I didn't want to have to mod the Grom to get the 5th gear. That didn't seem to make sense to me. And the slightly improved fuel economy and range, and also just the added top speed on the Grom, on the 3rd Gen Grom. Another factor that was relevant for me, may not be relevant for everyone else, is that as someone who has a YouTube channel that I'm trying to grow, it made more sense to get something new and something that could potentially attract other viewers. And there are plenty of YouTubers out there with the OG Grom and the SF Grom. So, for me, I just wanted to do something a little bit different, bring something different to the table. All right, guys, so that's the video. I hope this was helpful to go kind of line by line, category by category, and compare the two versions of Groms. Ultimately, it's really up to you to decide, where you place your priority. Is it engine performance? Is it price? Is it looks? Ultimately, it's up to you to decide where you place your priority, or what's more important to you, basically. Is it looks and price? If so, maybe the SF Grom is the choice for you. Or maybe it's performance or feature-based, which at that point, the 3rd Gen Grom definitely wins by a pretty decent margin. Well, thanks for tuning in. I hope you found this video helpful. I'm going to skate out of here, but until the next video, I'll check you all later. Peace.